Go down to North Elm Street or something. Or like, Goshen Road, yeah, go downtown. Go to the south end. Zombies or
Thank
a bunch
you.
of places. You gotta go.
It is 5:01. We are in order. Let the record show that the committee is here. And who else do we have? We have Mr. Nicolito.
Here.
Mr. Minichio.
Here.
Mrs. Toder. We have representatives of the central office and the high school staff and the tech service. And the chairman is on via Zoom. Anyone else on via Zoom that I need to know about? Or telephone? Ronnie never made it?
Did Ronnie make it?
Yeah, she's on a public line.
She is.
Okay. Thank you. And that was the roll call. Looking for a motion to approve the agenda. Thank you.
I'm gonna go grab them. Sorry, I thought that they were already done. I'll just go grab them.
Physical copy?
You wanna go grab them?
Yeah, we'll wait.
The one closer to Donna's office, they should be coming out right now. Although-
Did you do TPS? Or are people coming on? I hear dinging.
Yeah, people jumping off.
Okay, jumping on. Good.
So they thought this was regular.
Maybe. Maybe they're coming out early.
Okay, now I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
Pass it this way.
All those in favor?
Aye.
The agenda is approved. And now I'm looking for
Yeah, I'm doing.
Gracias.
a motion to approve the minutes that were sent out.
Ed, do you want
Anyone make
to,
that
for this
motion?
meeting, for the sick meeting?
Oh, I have the agenda.
Oh,
yeah, sorry.
Right, Mr. Kona shows up as making a couple of motions, which she wouldn't have made because she's not on this committee, so I'm not sure who did make those. That was a long time ago.
Really hard
I'll
to
have to
hear you.
look back.
Otherwise, the business, this
Yeah,
transaction
let's
looked fine.
So that's as far as it
About,
goes.
about here? Thank you.
Motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
And now we're looking for public participation. Members of the public and staff may bring to the committee's attention information, ideas, or matters of concern related to all the duties and responsibilities of this committee. The committee will not allow comments regarding specific staff members or personal grievances. Time for individual remarks will be apportioned according to the number of speakers and will be limited to 5 minutes per speaker unless extended by the chair. Is there anyone out there in Zoom land or some other electronic participation method who wishes to comment?
I would.
And who are you?
Jason Lafreniere.
Name and address for the purpose of the record. Thank you. Go ahead, Jason.
Jason Lafreniere, special education teacher at Torrington Middle School. I'd like to speak on the topic of THS mascot. I would like to recall that the secondary ad hoc committee brought forward a recommendation that all TPS schools fall under the same mascot with the same logo. This was recommended with the idea that once a Raider, always a Raider. Consistency with messaging and branding would help students to identify with their home school and help to retain students. The Torrington T, as it has been dubbed, has been incorporated into almost all school logos. However, the term Raider is not necessarily synonymous with all TPS schools. Each school still has their signature mascot. If it is determined that a change from the THS Raider and or the Torrington T are needed, then please honor the recommendation of the Secondary Ad Hoc Committee to standardize the mascot system-wide. Thank you.
Anyone else in the electronic sphere? Okay, I guess that's it for public participation. Thank you. Discussion or next steps, CHS mascot. I'm not sure why this is on our agenda. Who wanted this brought up?
It was a concern for the community. So they asked that we bring this forward. This seemed like the most appropriate venue to do that. I think that there has been concern. We've even been mentioned in not only local papers, but Hartford Current and various other newspapers, similar to the issues that are being addressed by major league sports teams. We are part of that as well. So the objection is to the Red Raiders terminology. I do have to say in the 16 years that I've been here, I've never really heard that term used, Red Raiders. I'm gonna defer to Robin in terms of concept, and certainly what we want to do is make sure that we are respectful, that we are continuing to help our students learn tolerance and an understanding of different cultures and
I
history.
can give you a little background of what I know about. So yes, in the past it was the Red Raiders, and that is not used anymore. And we took it off, we took the sign down in the front there, and we're fixing that, because that did still say Red Raiders. And then we also found out that some of the sports recognition letters still had that terminology, so we're taking care of that. But before I got there, the Red Raiders had, that's been taken away, and the T, again, that was before I got there. I did have a chance to speak to Mike McKenna, who has a little more background on the work that was done already. So there is no Raider mascot.
Right.
And the only thing on the school right now is there's still a tomahawk in the back of the building that will get painted over. But the T and the term Raider is what's used now. I think if there's any more, discussion, I think we would want to include the staff and community partners.
Community.
Yeah.
Yep.
Gary?
You say people have commented, besides the Hartford Current, which really has nothing to do with our traditions. I know you're just quoting. Have there been any American Indian or indigenous persons, tribes that have objected to this?
No, but there have been community members who have brought this up as an issue. So I
understand.
said I would bring it forward, and so we are.
But it would seem if we aren't using Red Raiders, and if the Indian is gone even from the wall of the gymnasium, as my great grandmother reminded me this past week, then perhaps we haven't been the Red Raiders Indian identified for a long time. Okay, next. Anyone else?
Just say same thing. I've never heard anybody say Red Raiders other than sports reporters. So I read some of those articles too, and I was a little frustrated that apparently none of them reached out to anybody from our school district, because if they had, they would have known that nobody says Red Raiders anymore. So it's kind of much ado about nothing. And I think that we have clearly been phasing out anything that is connected to, vestiges of that name.
Right. I've been there for 3 years now at the high school, and with, it's been Raiders and the T pretty much. So
Fiona, you wanted to say something.
I think it would be helpful if SIC would consider just formally removing red and making it official that it's only Raiders, and not allowing the Indian to be displayed or used on any sporting gear. I think it would really just solve the problem. If SIC considered that to move to the board and we officially voted on that, then I think it would kind of put the confusion to rest as far as what we are and what we are. So we would still be the Raiders, we just wouldn't have the red or the Indian associated with it.
And anybody who thinks that Raiders automatically means Indians is racist himself, right? Right? I mean, I would see it that way.
Well, that's not what that word even means.
Right,
It
that's
just
what I
means
mean.
somebody that goes in and takes what they want.
Right, if
You
you
know,
associate it
like
with a
victory,
particular group,
right?
that's your
Well,
problem.
sounds like a victory.
Yeah, like your athletic teams are trying to do, which is why it's.
Further discussion on this item?
The only other thing I
Sure.
would say is that a T really isn't a mascot. It's a
Right.
logo.
Right.
Yeah.
And I
We
think
don't-
there, because the word Raider really has no ethnic connotation in and of itself, it might be fun to create a new mascot that reflects the idea of a Raider, but isn't necessarily tied to an ethnic group.
Mhm.
So just,
Yeah, and you can have, you could actually probably even have a mascot that doesn't necessarily even have to connect to.
Phillies fan at it.
Yeah.
right, I
Armand.
mean, how teams use like pirates. I mean, there's other
Right.
things like that that
Right.
are not
I'm
sensitive.
And going along with Jason's comment, because I remember discussing that in the secondary ad hoc, can we then have that applied to the whole district as a whole? Rather than each school being its own, having its own mascot and name and stuff like that.
I suppose we don't have enough principals in the room to say what their schools would think
Right.
about that. I think Southwest would still want to be the Dragons. We could find out. And
Well,
I know
remember,
they
we
don't
have
have
big-
encompassing Raiders.
We've had a big change in who, the population of the schools in the last 2 years anyway, so this might be a good time to change the whole thing.
Before the Norwegians start complaining about using Vikings.
Like,
Yes.
I asked my brother-in-law about that today. He's not excited, but who knows? There might be people who are.
But I do agree with John. I think that if we could bring principals to the table,
Yeah.
because I think that as they were redistricting, a lot of the elementary schools did their original mascot, but put the T on there as well, trying to blend the two.
yeah, there's a lot of
Um,
gear with that T now, that
Right,
that the whole
on
district
even-
is
Correct.
purchasing and
The
wearing,
elementary and the
and,
middle.
which is nice. Yeah, and teachers, I'm sure, would want to be involved. Students, actually.
Students too. So committee consensus, this is what we want to do, recommend to the board, pass on to the board, our beliefs that Raiders minus the red, minus any Native American identification be considered the official identity.
Yeah, represents what we're doing now.
Now we can move on to the next item on the agenda, which is changes in the, I don't know if I worded that right, Yankee Middle School student support, is that what would be better? This is really yours, I'm gonna turn it over to you just to introduce it and then we can hear
I just want to ask Ally. Ally, I had shared with you you saw it, right? That there's about 6 slides to, yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, there was some, I don't know what to call it either. I was calling it curriculum and I don't know if that's the right wording or
It was a schedule change.
schedule
Yep.
change, yeah, that I think has some impact on terms of the classes that will be available for the students. And I thought it would be good for me as a board member, for the other board members to really have an understanding of these changes and, what we're looking to achieve from them and how we're going to measure whether they're successful or not.
So we've had a lot of changes at the middle school over the last few years, just in terms of leadership. And we are really happy that Brian Scott is joining us. Kelly Souza will be going into her 2nd year, Hillary her 3rd year. Jeff Shannon's been in the district a while. So we have a blend of veteran as well as new folks joining the team. We will have administration on each floor along with guidance to really monitor behavior as well as just engagement within the classroom. So that's just one piece. The reason why the schedule change, if you will, we've done, even though there's been that admin change and a lot of staffing changes, and we've done a lot of professional development, we haven't addressed really the elephant in the room, which is our test scores and how successful our students are going from middle school to high school. And I think that's something that we really need to look at. And so that's why we really took seriously a schedule change. We have heard, now that we are really articulating between the middle school and the high school, that our students are not as prepared as they can be for high school. And that's where the rubber meets the road, whether we like it or not. That's when kids earn credits. That's when they're planning for their futures. That's future careers. That's college. That's really getting ready for what do I want to do with the rest of my life. So we think we can do a better job, and we owe it to our students to make sure that we are providing them with the very best opportunities. So we would love to see, and I know Robin agrees, more AP and honor students and more students who are qualified for those accelerated classes. And to do that, we have to have a really good foundation. And we believe that this schedule change will really help us do that. So with that, I'm going to thank Mrs. Ferguson and her team, who presented a lot of information and a lot of thought and a lot of hard work went into their presentation and bringing this schedule together. I know Brian inherited some of this, but really embraced it. The administrative team there, and Leanne McGuire was part of that at the time, even though she's now at the high school. Gavin Craig and Kelly Souza and Hillary Sterling really pulling this together and working very hard on what you're going to hear Sue highlight this evening.
Right, so just a few highlights. We did present on June 11th, I think. We had about an hour-long presentation. I think you might have even attended, right? We did have actually about 100 families Zoom in. The presentation in its entirety is available on the website, on the Torrington Middle School website, and it's been recorded thanks to Allie. So if anybody wanted to watch it, they could. These are just 5 or 6 slides that we decided to share tonight with the SIG committee, just simply because it's kind of the crux of it. So really what we were hoping to do, and this is something, I guess I should back up for a minute, and I apologize, this is a little big. What we were trying to do is, you know, our middle school, even though it's not as large as it was when it opened in the 90s, it is still one of the larger middle schools in the state, right? And that presents very unique challenges, right? A host of challenges. We started working 2 years ago when Sue and I first came into these positions. You know, that's when we were designated an Alliance district and or had recently been. And we were looking at our test scores and saying, what can we do? We have to do something different because we have such a tiny segment of our population that's really achieving where they should be. And then if we look back over the past couple of decades, I mean, when I first came to Torrington as a teacher, Torrington was spotlighted by the state as like a beacon in this part of the state for all the wonderful things that we were doing. And our kids always were achieving above the state average. And what happened, right? So we were looking at that and we thought, okay, what are we going to do? So we partnered up with an author, a published author out of Virginia, who is very well known nationwide and internationally, actually, for his work on middle and high school scheduling and how to really get the best out of the hours and the minutes that you have, what you can do to provide the necessary supports, enrichments, enhancements, whatever, for all kids, even in a school with 1,100 kids, right? So he came here at Advance, actually brought him to the area, and we worked with Advance and some other districts in the area, and we attended many different sessions with him. He actually came here into this room, and he met with some of our guidance folks at the middle and high school, some of our administrators, and he took a look at the schedule that we had in place, and he kind of pulled it apart and said, okay, you don't have enough opportunities. You're not really exploiting the time that you have and getting the best bang for your buck because you don't have enough opportunities throughout your day to provide what he called a parallel learning track, which we're calling a wind block. So he helped us really see how we could turn the middle school into smaller learning communities by creating the house model. And Sue alluded to that a little bit just now by moving some of our really critical support staff physically out onto the floors and the wings. So they won't be in the main office, right? They're right there, they're accessible. Robin actually has a traveling desk that she moves around the high school.
I love it.
And, you know, like similar to what nurses have in the hospital, they have these stations. She's got one, you know, and so
And
she's
now the middle school have.
exactly. So these folks are out and about, they're visible, they see what's happening in real time. it's a natural deterrent to negative types of behaviors, right? And it also allows people to respond in real time to things, and hopefully not to the point where things get escalated out of control because they're right there and available. Guidance counselors, social workers, admins, secretaries. Okay, so he helped us see how to do that. We talked about vertical and horizontal academic continuity, because the schedule that we've been able to create not only allows for student engagement and opportunity, but for teachers. So for teachers to have times throughout their day when they can collaborate, when they can work in vertical and horizontal teams for curriculum planning, you name it, to talk about kids, you know, they're working with the kids in the same house and that sort of thing. Let's see, what else? So those were really our priorities. And then our biggest thing is, okay, what are we gonna do to support kids and meet them where they are? So in order to do this, we had to pull our schedule apart. We've created, until COVID happened, we really had an opportunity for 3 of these WIN blocks. WIN stands for What I Need Now. And those 3 periods throughout the day were times when students could have some choice, when they could receive support or intervention if needed, when they could receive, I guess I can use the word enrichment or further explore something that they're really good at or they're interested in. The other thing that we were really mindful of through our work with secondary ad hoc is thinking, okay, as we move through this whole notion of perhaps, you know, moving to a 7 to 12 model, thinking about student success plans as early as 6th and 7th grade, really starting to work with children as soon as they get to the middle school about, I know it sounds maybe a little bit odd to say when you're 11 or 12, you can start thinking about that, but you can. And some kids have a real good understanding, even at that young age, of where their interests lie. So working with guidance, working with Jeff Shannon and Maureen Mazzato, and really helping kids to kind of nail that down. And this schedule allowed for all of those things to take place during the course of the day. I think one of the objections or the concerns that the parent community had was around the idea that children were no longer going to be receiving any kind of enrichment. But that's simply not true. All we've really done is reformat things so that all students can get what they need. I don't know if you have specific questions, like Allie, if you can flip to the next slide, please.
I have a question to begin with. Why would a parent perceive that this was taking time away from enrichment if it wasn't?
Because the way that the schedule has really been done at the middle school for the past many years, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years probably,
At least.
They have run a heavily tracked model at the high school. So when children left 5th grade, went up to 6th grade, at the middle school, when they arrived on campus at the middle school, they were immediately tracked. And this will illustrate for you how it was done. It was not based on data. It was based on really subjective, kind of soft data.
Hence the teacher in your program who later will say that the kids in her brightest class were many of them not bright.
Correct, but they were well behaved.
It's sort of a devastating remark.
It is. So what happened is, if you look at this, now this is just one data point, and that's not the only one we looked at. We looked at several, but for our purposes tonight, so these are the most current ESPA scores we have. You know, we had 14, so level 4 would be considered, you know, above 90%. So what you would consider to be a child who should be in an enriched situation, right, or who would benefit. We only had 14.3% in ELA and 9.9 in math, and then you can see the numbers. So, but that did not even close in any way align with the percentages of students who were assigned to those enriched classes. So that we looked at that. We said, you know what, we want to be making sure that we're providing opportunities for all of our kids. And what was happening, and then as Sue said, you know, we had conversations with the 9th grade, like the math department, for example, and they were frightened because even our students coming out of enriched 8th grade math classes were not necessarily succeeding in 9th grade math. So we knew we had to do something. Allie, can you go to the next one? Just one second. So if we look at, here's another data point. So this is our internal data assessment. However, it is a nationally normed assessment. So it's the STAR assessment that we use, our universal screener. And this was from this past winter. And if you look at, look at like the 8th graders, according to that winter assessment, 1.2% above grade level in reading. But we had, you know, many, many, many more children assigned to these enriched classes. And even when we drilled down and we spoke to teachers who taught enriched, but also what you might consider perhaps a more average class, they told us that they really didn't, there really was no difference in what they were, their delivery of instruction. So we said, all right, we need to make a shift. We're very excited about what we've been able to come up with. You know, it's a very challenging project to schedule that many kids, and I think we've been able to do a really good job. And I'm sorry for many reasons about our current situation, but you know, also because it's kind of thwarting some of these efforts, but we're still moving forward, but in this way. So Gary, sorry.
I love the idea, which I mentioned before, but to make it really work, are we going to go back to first and second and third grade and make sure that those children are not moved forward? We've talked about this before, and I know that we've had a tendency over the time, you know, my kids included, you know, whether it's me or my wife, I won't say who, calling the principal and saying, you know, no, she should be, or he or she should be, and then he or she would be put in the upper level math, which he or she wasn't qualified for. But I know we have kids coming into the middle school that can't read. Some have a very difficult time reading. So it's got to start sooner. It's great for the middle school. We do need to have you know, those who are exceedingly bright and deserve all the resources available given to them, and those who go down the, you know, the ladder in terms of needs. We give them all those. But are we going to try to make some changes, as we started talking about last year, in the lower levels?
Right.
Is that okay?
So I hear exactly what you're saying, and we're looking really critically at that, and this is a conversation for another time, I think, because it gets back to our curriculum, right? That whole language movement and that, you know, I mean, that's a very hot debate, but we are looking at that, and we are purchasing resources for this year so that we can give our teachers, you know, some reading and resources that they need to teach the population of students who need it taught the way you and I probably learned to read, you know, and that's going to take care of a huge part of that problem.
No, I agree. I'm just saying, I don't know how much this will work. It's helpful, but without starting in first, second, third grade, you know, the middle school teachers are at a significant disadvantage to try to catch the kids up.
You're
in
right.
many cases.
No, you're absolutely right. And that's kind of what we've said to the high school, right? Because we're sending kids to the high school who are not necessarily well prepared. And no judgment. I'm not accusing or attacking anybody's hard work. It's just the structures and the systems that we've had in place, not just in Torrington, but everywhere, right? So we need to really be critical about how we look at these things. And, you know, this is a place to start. And yes, it's got to be systemic.
I think there's this is a politics thing. There seems to be a shift in parenting. And, you know, my younger kids went through the, you know, literally a trophy for every kid. And trophy, and that's Little League and soccer. And I think parents are moving away from that and looking for more excellence in some kids, and then the kids that have other skills, you know, excel at those skills, whether they're education, whether it's school or sports or arts. And I see lots of parents preferring to go, at least I talk to, going back to the old way, where they need to learn reading, writing, arithmetic, and be prepared for middle school and high school.
Sure.
Prepared for college.
You know, we need to do that. You know, we need to make sure we're focusing on the 21st century skills, but we can't abandon the basics. We can't just throw out that basic instruction either. And I think that's,
I'm looking at that chart and seeing 1.8% above grade level in reading, 3.0 in math, and then the next grade 1.2 and 2.1. Is that normal? I mean,
No.
Thomaston, Winstead, Litchfield, or
No.
anyone else have that?
no, it's
So where are those kids going then? Why? This is what Gary's talking about, I guess, huh?
Yeah.
Well, can I say
I
something?
think
Yes.
it's,
I think there's also a big factor, you know, if you talk to a student who's been tracked from elementary school, they know. So if they're tracked in math and they're in, we might call it A, B, C, whatever we call it, red, blue, and green, they know what the adults think about them or what we're providing them if they're in red, green, or blue. And they lose confidence. And they get themselves pigeonholed into a fact that I'm not good at math. I'm not good at reading. And that follows them to high school. And you see it and you talk to them. And I saw it in fourth grade, you know, when I taught fourth grade. And now, you know, you talk to these kids, and by the time they get to high school, it's really hard to change that mindset.
it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're absolutely right. They end up believing about themselves what we as the adults in their lives come to expect from them.
But the other side of that is true also. If we tell them that they are able to do well and to succeed and to exceed, they will.
They will aspire
Which
to
means
that.
if what you're saying is true, and I don't doubt it at all, I've seen it, then why aren't we telling the brighter kids, hey, you know, you're bright, but you're not bright enough. Here's more to do, you know, and make them rise to that.
Well, I'm glad that's a perfect segue to the next slide. So I said earlier, we started really kind of, you know, this was a seed idea that was planted a few years ago, and we have been working to provide professional learning experiences to get to exactly that. How can we differentiate for all levels of learners? How can we stretch our kids as much as we possibly can? How can we provide our students with that core belief? How can we instill that in them, that core belief that they are wonderful and they are amazing and they're rock stars?
Not that they're wonderful or amazing, but they
learners,
can do something.
They can.
Because that's what Gary's talking about with participation trophies. Oh, you're wonderful. I have high self-esteem, but I don't know anything.
Right, but I don't.
T-shirt.
Yeah.
Change it.
But that they can do wonderful things, right? I guess is what I mean, that they can
They can
achieve.
perform.
They can perform and
Once they-
achieve at high levels because and I can tell you that, and I know this firsthand from being at the school level, seeing some of my former students who are very intelligent children, highly intelligent children, very capable, not being given access to those so-called enriched classes because maybe they got into trouble a time or two, or they didn't have an adult. They didn't have an adult at home who was making that phone call to say, I want my son in that, so it became an issue of real equity. So anyway, back to this. So we've done this, we continue to do it. We're working really hard. We're learning how to do this in a virtual format, in the hopes that it's really going to pay off for Torrington's kids.
I just want to ask about the differentiation, which I've heard quite a bit and have probably even experienced some of that in the elementary.
Yep.
If what you're talking about is true and those parents that didn't call to get their kids into the enrichment classes, aren't they being pushed anyways through that differentiation model where the teachers are teaching to them if they may not be in the enrichment class, But if they have that potential, isn't that what that is?
Yes, differentiation, and it happens probably more at the elementary than it does anywhere else, just by the nature of that level. Because in an elementary classroom, you have a more heterogeneous group of kids,
Yeah.
right? So you've got the whole continuum. But what we've done at the middle school, though, is we've tracked our kids. So we have a more homogeneous population of kids in various classrooms. So ideally, yes, you're going to differentiate for every student, but if you have a group of students who are labeled to be performing at a certain level, then I think it becomes almost a subliminal mindset that not as much of that is needed.
And I would even go beyond that. In the secondary, we have not done as good a job in differentiation in some areas. I think some teachers have implemented it for many, many years. But I think that for some other teachers, it's really new and it's been difficult and it's been challenging. And we've done more PD in the last 2 years around differentiation. I think elementary, as Sue was saying, it seems to be a more natural fit. Teachers are more used to doing it, but they also have less students as well. So I think now we're really looking at secondary and saying, okay, how can I differentiate for the students in front of me? And what do I need to do? And we're providing the training to do that. I think teachers didn't get that before. And I think that's been a real hardship. And they've been asking. It's not that, there just were so many things on the plate that now we're saying, you know what, we're really making a concerted effort. We're really focusing in on this, and we really are moving forward. So I think it is going to make a difference.
I'll just add one more thing, but I got involved in this after 4 or 5 years going to meetings about lots of these things, but teachers and other people and community people say, well, because our population is so diverse, that's why our scores are so low, which I take as racist. I mean, whether you're Hispanic or Chinese or Polish or Black, in other school systems in other parts of the country, they outperform all of our students in many ways, shapes, and forms. Given the tools, they'll be as successful as any other student in that school, if they so choose. But if we don't give those kids those tools, and if there's not this ongoing perception or maybe just thought process among some people that they can't achieve the same success. If you look at the newspaper, look across the country, it doesn't matter if you're Hispanic, Black, or what. There are successful people in every industry.
That's what George Bush called the soft racism of low expectation.
Low expectations, exactly.
Yeah.
You're the one who wanted this here. Is this what you want? Or do you have questions that haven't been addressed? And because we have only 15 minutes to go, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think,
turn it around to what you were.
with the new 3 win blocks that are going in, what is being removed to accommodate for those? And will students have to make the choice between, I want to be in enrichment math, or I can be in orchestra? Or, I did a little bit of the FAQs on the website and I saw that was like a question. So I want to know what is,
There are, because of COVID, we're only able to offer 2 win blocks now. So that's one adaptation we've had to make. Students will not have to miss out on unified arts. However, it's only in 8th grade that they would be able to take like an algebra or for high school credit, the world language for high school credit, the 9th grade integrated science for high school credit. So that's actually a benefit of the schedule too. That's something that we were able to gain as a result of this. And then during those wins that we can provide enrichment opportunities for students, 6th, 7th, and 8th. We can provide remediation if that's needed, intervention. There's also opportunities for student choice, such as coding and I don't know, I can't even remember what they are right now, but there's a list of things that kids can choose to take.
Yeah.
Right, some STEM elective type classes. So it there's not really anything that's going away other than, so we've changed to shorter periods, right? So that we were able to make this work. There's more periods in the day. During those WIN blocks, it's been worked out, and I'm not the scheduler, so I didn't do the schedule, okay? So bear with me. You have to have a special kind of a brain to do that, and I don't have it.
Yeah.
During those WIN blocks, teachers also are scheduled to have opportunities for collaborative time. So there's that. There's also time during the day where teachers have an academic, are we calling it academic study hall? So there's a period when the kids have opportunity for like a study hall-ish type of an experience with a teacher there who's there to support, not just there to sit and monitor and keep safety, right? Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
I think you talked more about the
Academic
stuff
lab.
that's adding, which I think is awesome,
Yeah.
but more of, is anything going away?
Well, what's going away is those quote unquote enriched classes in 6th and 7th and in 8th.
I think what's
Yes.
going away are labels, and I think what we're really doing is looking at what students need and making sure that we're providing it and challenging students to the degree that John and Gary were both talking about, so that they really are putting their best forward, so that they are ready as they get into the high school level.
So we, just to clarify, so we think the scheduling opportunities that WIN will present itself and the non-labeling, those are the two core issues to some of the test scores that will be helping.
I think it's the whole package. I really do. I think having, as even just the restructuring of where people are going to be physically located in the building, I think that's going to be a huge help. Just to respond to situations as they occur in real time. I mean, you see that at the high school, I'm sure, right?
Oh yeah. And kids learn by doing, so when they're all working together, it works for all the kids, so I think that's a big piece.
Right, and when, Gary's talking about diversity, there's such a richness in diversity. So if, by and I'm not talking about racial and ethnic diversity, just diversity in general. If we're skimming off all of our students who have this perceived greater ability, and it's a perception, right? It's not grounded in any data.
Sometimes it's real.
But sometimes it's real. But based on just our numbers, the numbers that we're pulling right into these classes don't jive with what our data shows.
Well, it's even on the other end, right? The kids that need more help. I mean, I think it's both of those sides.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it should help all of
right. So to have a more balanced environment, I think everybody's going to benefit. It's going to be a richer discussion.
Okay, a couple of committee members haven't had a chance to ask a question. Jess, you may not have a question, but is there anything you want to get out?
No, I don't have any questions.
Okay, thank you. And okay, back then, I just want to make sure. And anyone else who hasn't said anything so far, this may be your time. No?
Now is your time.
Let me let the talkers go. You're all set?
Right.
Okay. Anyone else have anything to add to this? So I interrupted you a couple times. Is there anything you want to finish?
No, I appreciate the questions. So thank you for the questions.
Fiona, anything out there in Indian land? Or wherever you are?
No, I mean, I think the board's talked about it in the past. We don't really and haven't had a real enriched program that was meaningful. And I think that if the board wants to look at that smaller percentage of kids that are truly enriched, that we would need to look at it in a bigger picture, both financially, and program wise.
Sounds like a job for the school improvement committee. Yes, no?
But the other thing I was just curious, how many kids, and you may not have this, but how many kids were participating in these enriched courses?
I'm going to give you a rough number. Okay?
Yeah.
I believe there were, like, let's just say an English class, let's just say 8th grade English, probably 75 kids.
Okay, so I think
1.8.
for me, that explains what was running, just myself.
Yeah, I think they were running 3 sections.
Right.
in-
That's, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good guess.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
Okay, looks like we're ready for comments for the good of the order. Nikki? Yes.
I do not have any.
Sue?
No, we're looking forward to implementing the TMS schedule next year.
Ed? Fiona? Anyone out there in electronic land? Allie? Thank you for running this meeting. Alan? Gary?
I'd say it's refreshing, and if you guys can pull it off, you deserve to double your pay. And go for it. I would hope you guys can pull it off. For the sake of the kids.
No, I'll save it for full board meeting.
Sue?
No, thank you.
Robin?
I think, like what Gary said, it is exciting and our kids are capable, so capable, and they're gonna do better.
Kathy?
I look forward to seeing how it works and hearing, updates on how it's going in schools. Because I think it sounds great.
Okay.
If they do better, I got a project for you.
Topics for future meetings. Future meetings. I heard Fiona wants us to investigate, I'm gonna put it down as tag, but I know that's not exactly what she said. Anyone else? Topics for future meetings? Aside from the usual things that usually clutter our agenda. Next meeting is September 2nd, right here. Motion to adjourn? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you all very much for coming.